So this is Ithemba Engineering, okay? It's one of the questions in the textbook. It's a QE question from 2013, okay? So let's just have a look at the required. It says analyze and discuss the profitability and working capital management of Ithemba during the financial years ending 30 November, 20 year 1, 20 year 2. Support your answer with relevant calculations and ratios. Mark allocation. 10 for analysis and 20 for discussion. Okay. So what I would like you guys to do just to start off with is I want you to read through the question. Okay. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to mark off what you think is important. And what I'd like you to do is there's 10 marks for ratio analysis. I don't want you to do the calculations themselves. But what I do want you to do is I want you to write down which ratios you would calculate as part of your solution. Okay? And there's another thing that I do want to show you later, but I want you guys just to write down the 10 ratios, or if it's more than 10 ratios, the 12 or 15 ratios you would calculate as part of this. Okay? There's a specific reason why I want you to do this, because I think that you'll make a mistake with it. Let's see what you do and write down what you would have done in an exam. Can I give you 10 minutes just to read through it and then to write down those ratios? Or maybe you won't need 10 minutes, maybe 8 minutes. Is that all right? So please try to do that yourselves, and you'll see that there's an error that you're going to make with it. Most of you, I would imagine. Okay, so read through the question. Okay, let's start just discussing, guys. Now, first things first. I want to actually just go through, without you having a look at the solution, what ratios you would have calculated. So I'd like to open this up to everybody here and just find out what ratios you would have calculated, guys. So tell me what you're going to do. Someone talk to me, please.
Gross profit margin ratio.
Gross profit margin. What are you talking about? The percentage for 20Y1 and the percentage for 20Y2. Yes, that's on.
Yes.
Correct. What else?
Interest cover.
Sorry?
The interest cover.
Now, why would interest cover generally probably not be on the solution? What ratios did I ask for?
Profitability, but every other practice question out there, they usually do interest cover.
Okay, so just let me explain. This is one of the things I just want to actually just point out with you with the question. They've given you creditors, but they have given you bank overdraft. Is bank overdraft part of your working capital? Normally.
Normally, no, but in this question it says.
It is normally part of working capital management because it's current assets and current liabilities. What bank overdraft normally is part of your current liabilities. So yes, there is a discussion for bank overdraft, okay? But interest cover is more of a gearing ratio or a solvency ratio rather than a profitability ratio. In this board solution, okay, they don't have interest cover on it because interest cover more or less covers solvency, whether you're solvent, okay? But there are things that will relate to bank overdraft that will form part of this discussion itself. So I'm just telling you what's in the board exam question solution. I prefer the board. I prefer to work to what solutions were given. So in this question, no, there isn't interest cover. What else is there, guys? Tell me.
Change in revenue percentage.
Change in revenue percentage, definitely. What else?
Change in gross profit percentage.
Change in gross profit. Now, here's the thing. I just want you guys to understand something. A lot of you, when you get asked to do a ratios question, seem to be fixed on the ratios. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is when I go and I mark exam questions. But what often happens, sorry, I don't know what, I pressed something by mistake. Guys, what ends up happening is that you guys don't do the simple changes in stuff. So guys, change in revenue, change in GP, change in bad debts, change in depreciation, change in research and development costs, change in operating costs. Okay? Those little things like that, guys, are the easiest ones to do in a question. Now, I'm sure that there are a whole lot of you that didn't do that. Okay? So when we look at ratios, we need to actually sit there and we need to say, listen, there are 3 types of ratios that we're going to do. So number 1, the formal ratios. A current ratio, A, which you can't do here, days debtors, days creditors, GP margin, okay? That type of scenario, that's a standard type of ratio. Then we're going to do the movement from year to year. What is the percentage change in revenue, the percentage change in bad debts, the percentage change in depreciation, percentage change in R&D? And then there's a third type, which is common size analysis, which we are not necessarily going to do here. Guys, they asked you the chances that you got a common size analysis here are not great if you had to do it. But you did see a common size analysis in the question that I did with you during the week. So I have done common size analysis with you, where you've got 100% and then you had the 54% and 60% for gross profit. So you've got those 3 to do. So when it comes time to actually doing a question like this, sorry, and I just want to load up solution part 1. Okay. This is where the marks came for solution part 1 over here. So let's just have a look to see what they did. They said revenue growth, 3%. GP margin 40.1 down to 36.5. Okay, so there's a formal ratio. There's a change in the percentage. Bad debts to revenue. Guys, how much bad debts there were compared to revenue. That's a ratio. Operating costs compared to revenue, 11.6 to 11.1. Change in operating costs. R&D down by 8.1, depreciation down by 1.5. The movement in total, other operating costs and total operating costs. Guys, did any of you write down EBITDA to revenue? Did anybody here do it? Now, EBITDA is very, very important because we're looking at our cash flow type scenario, because the moment we take the depreciation and the amortization out, we can look at our cash generation capability within an organization, because that's what EBITDA does. Now, whenever you've got a question where there are problems with cash flow in a question, you guys need to just make sure that you do EBITDA. Does that make sense? Whenever there's a cash flow problem, which there is in this question, you could see it from the overdraft, you're going to do it. Effective interest rate, they've done. Change in profit before tax. So guys, just the movement, 23,400 down to 14,050. That one is change in profit before tax. Guys, I'm sure most of you would have got inventory days, okay, inventory turnover, trade receivable days. I'm sure you've got that. And then guys, I've got return on total assets, return on equity, return on capital employed. Okay, now guys, there's 13.5 marks there, limited to 10. Remember, you only need 5 to pass. But I want you guys to actually think, if I get into a question and they ask me to calculate ratios, number 1, I can do something, an actual formal ratio. I can also do a percentage movement from year to year, and I can do common size analysis. And I'm not sure whether all of you actually thought in those terms when I asked you to practice this question. So what I'm trying to do now is I'm just trying to make sure I get your exam technique right. Is that okay? There are 1 or 2 things in here that you'll be a bit surprised with, like effective interest rates and stuff like that. Guys, the reason is because the bank overdraft went from 102,800 to 127,500. They are not generating cash inside this organization. Matter of fact, they're struggling for cash. They're not actually generating cash. If you have a look at your profit, 14,050, and you've got a bank overdraft of 127.5 million, if that bank chose to foreclose on that loan, you would be dead. There was no way you could actually afford to pay back that overdraft without actually stripping the entire assets out of the company. And guys, when I ask you for working capital, remember what's in working capital. It's debtors, there's stock, there's creditors, bank overdraft, any short-term assets and liabilities, they're all in there. So the reason that we need to take bank overdraft into account is because it's a current liability, and I'm not sure whether you did that. Also with profitability, guys, they have got like a return on equity. And I just want to explain something in here. It is not in the solution, but I do want to actually just comment here, guys. What is your return on equity? 6.6%. And your return on capital employed and return on assets is 9.6%. Can anybody tell me what is happening in there? What is so concerning? Because in the solution, they do make reference to it, although they don't discuss it formally. Why is, if return on equity is 6.6 and return on capital employed is 9.6, what is terrible about that situation? Anyone?
Is the finance charges dropping their return on their WACC?
So if I didn't have debt, my return would be 9.6% if I didn't have debt. Because that's debt and equity, the return on capital employed. So what should you normally see inside a solution? You should see the return on capital employed being less than your return on equity. Because I take debt, I should be able to take debt at 10% and then generate a return on of 15% on it. So what should happen to my return on equity, guys? It should go up. The moment that your return on equity is lower than your return on capital employed, it means that whatever you're paying in debt charges is more than you're generating from your assets because it's gone down. Does everybody understand that? Does that make sense? I'm not saying that that's going to be a formal part of the question, but you can see that debt is not being used properly if your return on capital employed, your ROCE, is bigger than your return on equity. Are you guys comfortable with that? And we're going to go through it a little bit later on in the solution itself. So I'm going to leave this one up here, guys. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually start discussing the solution itself. Is that all right? So I have a look at these numbers here, and I'm going to start going through, and we're going to actually start pulling out points that we want to do for our discussion. Is that okay? I'm just going to sorry. Okay. So if you're going to do profitability, what's going to happen? We need to do actual percentage changes from year to year. We need to do actual ratios. And we also need to do expenses as a percentage of sales while we're doing it. So like bad debts to revenue. The only way you can analyze bad debts is to say, this is my sales, this is my percentage bad debts to sales. Operating costs, guys. Okay, this is my operating cost, this is my revenue, this is my percentage of operating costs to revenue. So guys, we've got formal ratios. We've got movements from year to year. Okay, and if you got profitability, generally try to do a return on equity because that is also considered to be a profitability ratio. And then guys, if there's a cash flow situation, just remember, it's better to analyze some EBITDA rather than EBIT. You can do both of them. At the moment there's a cash flow situation, you need to start seeing what your cash generating capability is. And you've got to remove your non-cash items out of it. That's why they've got EBITDA to revenue in here. So let's start, guys. Did they tell you what the inflation rate was in this question or not? They didn't, huh? But you know what inflation is in South Africa. What's inflation in South Africa, guys? It's 5% at the moment. So they don't need to tell you what inflation is in a question. You're supposed to know what the inflation is. So let's start off with the discussion of revenue. And I'd like you guys to try help me answer this. Guys, now, what I want to do is I want to just go back to the question. What has it told you there? And I'm going to just read through a couple of things now very, very quickly. Okay. It says the construction industry in South Africa has been under significant pressure in recent years due to a slowdown in the global economy and limited infrastructure spend by government. Do you think that should be in your solution, guys?
Yes.
Profitability. As a result, Ithemba has struggled to grow gross revenue in the past 3 years. Should that be in the solution, guys? Yeah.
Yes.
Steel is a major raw material used by Ithemba in the manufacturing process. Which ratio should that be part of? Which one? Steel's part of your major raw material, so it's not going to form part of sales. What's it going to form part of? Which discussion?
Inventory change.
Or gross profit percentage, because it's trading, it's stock. So GP margin. Guys comfortable with that? It says foreign subsidiaries are invoiced in US dollars, and it says exports represent 10% of annual revenue. So what part of the analysis should that be part of?
Revenue.
Revenue. Okay. Now, I don't know whether you guys did stuff like that when you're reading through the question. Okay. It says many of its products and designs have been patented to protect the company's intellectual property. Should that form part of our discussion as well? It should. They put this into the question because they want you to do it. It says you allow customers 60 days from invoice to pay amounts due. Do you think when we analyze debtors, we should put that into the solution?
Yes.
Okay. Interest on overdraft, 10% per annum, compounded monthly. Do you think we should put that into the question? Yes. And has no other debt facilities other than an overdraft. Do you think we should put that into this question in the solution? Yes. And concerns about the company's cash flow generation. Are they telling you what to talk about? Yes. Now, I want to ask you, when you're reading through the question, did you actually take all of that stuff into account and mark it off? So what you should have done is you should have sat there and said, oh, they're talking about sales here, so I better mention that when we do revenue. And they're talking about sales here, so we should actually do it with revenue. And with steel, we should put that into our GP percentage. And working capital management. Ithemba's holding larger inventories because they're delaying payments of accounts. I should put that into working capital management. And 60 days, I need to compare it to what number I get over here. And the overdraft to 10%, no other debt facilities. I need to put that into my discussion of the overdraft. And bankers are reluctant to obtain, to give them finance because of the company's cash flow generation. Shit, I better actually do EBITDA here because we're not generating cash. I need to do stuff before cash. So I'm just trying to actually just show you how to do something. And this is just purely an exam technique session that I'm doing with you. Don't feel bad about it. But again, you need to go to the question first when you're doing these things. So please just bear that in mind. There, I'm going back to the ratios. So with revenue, what do you think is going to be in the revenue thing? Do the simple shit first. 3%.
Revenue improved.
Now, what is inflation in South Africa?
5%.
5%.
Okay, so has it improved or has it gone down in real terms?
Down in real terms.
Gone down in real terms. So we got to say it is not improved. Okay. And why is it not improved? What's in the question? What did it say? Sorry, let me go back. What did it say? Slowdown in the global economy and limited infrastructure spend by government. Guys, it's got worse is where the mark is. Whenever there's a highlighted thing, you get a mark for that. But you can tell. So it's got worse. And what else do you think we need to do? What else is in the question? What should we be talking about that relates to sales?
The steel, the product.
No, that's GP percentage. That's not sales. Remember we said we're invoicing in US dollar. So if they say that we're invoicing in US dollars, what should we be saying in our solution? Maybe movements in Forex rates have caused problems. That's all you need to do. Okay? If the Rand has been strengthening, then we have a problem. And the Rand for a long time in the last year has been strengthening. I know it's gone out for a ball of shit now, but it was actually strengthening for a period of time. Okay? The other thing is you got to mention inflation, guys. Always inflation. You always got to compare back to inflation with all of these. You would expect everything to go up by 5% to stay constant. So it says it's concerning that the growth rate is below the CPI or inflation rate. It's below 5%. And invoicing in US dollar may have caused some of the problems as well if the Rand improved and the foreign currency got worse. Guys, similarly, if you get another question where they say that they sell overseas, if your sales have gone up by a lot, you could have said that maybe because we're invoicing in US dollars, because the exchange rate has gotten worse, our sales have gone up. Are you guys comfortable with what to do with Forex if you're dealing with revenue in a question? Does this make sense to you? Is that all right? Let's go on to GP margin now. What are we going to say, guys? And I'm going to just take back the... Here we go. So what do we need to say about GP margin? $40.1 down to $36.5. What does that mean? Good or bad?
Bad.
Bad.
It is bad. Can I just explain something to you? There's different ways of dealing with this. So I'm not just dealing with this question. I'm just doing an exam technique thing. If your sales have gone up by 30% this year and your GP percentage had gone down by 4%, that would be absolutely okay. Because maybe what you were doing is you were reducing prices to boost sales. Does everybody understand that? So GP percentage going down is not necessarily always a bad thing, as long as your sales go up exponentially more than your GP percentage goes down. Because you understand, you can reduce GP percentages to promote more sales. Okay? Buy my face mask, it's cheaper. Okay? Or buy my hand sanitizer, it's cheaper. And you boost sales that way. Are you guys comfortable? But in this case, your sales have gone down in real terms, and your GP percentage has gone down, which means it's very, very bad. So the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to have to say, listen, this is very, very bad. It's a concern, okay? GP percentage has gone down. What was in the question that you need to actually mention in your GP percentage, guys?
Was it the volatility of the steel price?
Volatility of the steel price. So basically the question said you've had huge volatility in the steel price. So there's possibility that steel price volatility played a role in declining margins. Guys comfortable with this? By the way, there's 38 marks in the solution, and you only need to, it's out of 20. So you only need to get 1 out of every 4 points in the solution to pass, by the way. So if you're looking at this and it's actually worrying you, just think it's only 1 out of every 4 points to pass. Okay? But guys, you've got to go back to the question and actually pull out what's from the question. And then guys, I told you, with GP percentages and expenses, you always mention something. What is the thing that you always mention? Remember I spoke about economies of scale, guys? So declining gross profit due to Ithemba's lack of economies of scale. If you if you grow bigger than inflation, you should be able to get bulk discounts, etc. So they've even got the explanation in the board solution. It says Ithemba's gross profit margin is expected to remain fairly constant from year to year as revenue increases, are expected to result in other costs of sales, efficiencies such as bulk discounts, etc. Now, because they've reduced in size, guys, okay, because it's less than inflation, you would expect the GP to go down a little bit because you'll lose some of your economies of scale. Does that make sense, guys? If your sales go up, you would expect better GP because I get economies of scale because I can negotiate better bulk discounts, I can negotiate better terms with the suppliers, etc. So you always put economies of scale into a revenue question. Is that all right? Okay, this is just, I'm trying to do an exam technique thing with you guys. So hopefully this will help you. Okay, next one. Operating costs, guys. What are we going to do with operating costs? Come, let me do the first one. Research and development has gone down by 8.1%. This is a concern because what did we do inside the question? Oh, no, sorry, I went into the wrong one, sorry. That one. It says, every year Ithemba invests significantly in research and development to improve existing product designs and develop new products. Many of its products and designs have been patented to protect the company's intellectual property. So, guys, the fact that R&D has gone down, is this a good thing or a bad thing?
Good.
Bad. Okay. And again, the bold one is concern, because we should be investing in R&D to protect our company. So as long as you said it was bad, you got your mark. Depreciation down by 1.5%. Tell me, what does that mean?
Less capital investments.
Less capital investment. We can do that. Less investment in infrastructure. Okay, so you'll get a mark for that. Your bad debts to revenue, guys, what does it mean? 1.9% to 2.1.
Is it poor credit control?
Guys, we've got bad credit control. Okay, there's another mark. Other operating costs up by 7.7. What are we going to do? What would you expect them to go up by?
Inflation.
Inflation, which is 5. It's worse than 5. So you should explain that. Inflation forms a part of that, 5%. But it's not just inflation. There are other things. So in a construction company, guys, tell me, what do you think the other operating costs are in a construction company? And it's not remember, we've already done all of our cost of sales and all of that stuff. What do you think the other operating costs will primarily be? Once you take the manufacturing out of it, it should be salary. So you guys comfortable with that? And generally within a question in South Africa, what has been happening with salaries? Have salaries been going up above inflation rates in South Africa?
Yeah.
They have been. So what they've done inside the question is other operating costs increased by 7.7, which may reflect wage pressure and inflationary increases. Are you guys comfortable with that? So you would expect 5 at 7.7. Other costs generally will be salaries. Okay, could be rent. If you're a pick and pay, maybe it would be rent. But for a construction company, it's not rent. Do you guys understand? But you've got that there. And then total operating costs at 2.3. What are you going to say about that? Sales up by 3. This by 2.3. What does that mean? Just be simple, guys. They're not looking for you to be incredibly clever. Just do a simple answer. What does that mean?
They've grown at a lesser rate than sales.
So I've managed costs well. That's all you need to do. It's a little bit better than revenue, which means I've been efficient in my cost management. Pure and simple. You don't need to know why. You just say, you've managed costs well. Thank you very much. Guys, comfortable with that? Okay. Now, EBITDA, guys, that is relating to cash flow generation. Does everybody understand? Because EBITDA deals with, it's before depreciation and it's before amortization, which means this is how much cash I'm physically generating inside my organization. And the reason that I'm discussing it as part of this solution is because they've asked me for working capital as well. And my cash is part of my working capital management. Okay. And there's a problem. The overdraft's been growing. Okay. So, guys, what are you going to say as part of this? Going on to working capital now.
Negative cash generation.
Negative cash generation. Overdraft has gone up. Perfect. Okay. Guys, what else? What's happened to your EBITDA revenue? And your change in EBITDA? It's gone down. So if my EBITDA has gone down, that means I'm not generating cash. Are you guys comfortable with this? That makes sense. Now, guys, I'm not going to really, this is quite a strange thing, but let's just talk about the simple marks. Overdraft gone up, therefore, what, guys?
The risk of a company increases.
Sorry,
Yeah, which risk?
financial.
Financial
risk.
risk.
Now, there's a nice simple one. Are you guys comfortable with that? Cool? My profit before tax has gone down by 40%. Okay, why has it gone down by 40%?
Because of the increase in the finance charges.
Huge amounts of finance charges, therefore it's gone down. Yes? Guys comfortable with that? What else does the question say? It's had no other debt facility since 20X9. Should you be financing everything through an overdraft or should you be getting long-term debt?
Long-term debt.
Is that all right? So you should just mention it inside the question, inside the solution itself. Is that all right? Now, guys, I'm just going to open up the discussion there. Okay. More finance risk. Okay. The large finance costs could be attributed to the fact that Ithemba makes use of short-term debt, which indicates inappropriate financing policies. Operating profits decreased by 22%, whilst profit before tax by 40%. Finance cost is depleting its profits. Okay. They mentioned that you've got a high settlement of trade creditors. I don't know. They didn't mention creditors. They're just doing it as, now something like that to suck out of your thumb is very, very difficult. Okay. That's why I say always try to look at what's in the question before you deal with something else. Okay. So I'm not saying you're going to get these, but remember, you only need to get 1 out of every 4 to pass. Huh? You need to get 2 out of every 4 to get 100%. So solution's quite broad. Is that all right? But guys, if you've got cash flow problems, if you didn't know before, you should be using EBITDA in your analysis. Does that make sense to you? So that you can work out your cash stuff. And I don't know whether that's something that you would have known before today, but it's in there. Guys, comfortable? Let's do working capital. Guys, and again, please just understand, you only need 1 out of every 4 points to pass. I know that this solution looks very, very difficult, But I keep on going back to the simple stuff, like what's in the question. And if it's in the question, you need to be just dealing with it. Okay. So let's start with working capital management. And let's start with trade debtors, guys. So, guys, what do you think you're going to say with trade debtors?
60 days is too much.
So it's gone from when to when? 65 to 75. Be simple, please. Simple stuff. It's gone from 65 to 75. Therefore, this is good or bad?
This
Bad.
is bad.
It's bad. And it's creating cash flow problems. There. Okay. And what's in the question? What did it say in the question about it? Industries at 60 days. So do you think we should talk about something from the question that industries at 60 days? Therefore, what are we going to have to say? We are doing worse than industry. It shows that we're not managing stuff. Right? And what else is in the question? Which one of these ratios here deals with working capital management? Which one? This one, bad debts to revenue. Our bad debts percentage has gone up, which means what? We're not managing our debtors properly. There's the 3 points. Can you see it comes out of the question? Again, you need to go look inside the question to go and find the stuff. Okay. And guys, what does it say over here? I want you to just read it. Just at the bottom of the page. So it says, we've been forced to hold bigger inventories. So what do you think we're going to do with our inventory days? 55 to 65. Why has it gone from 55 to 65? Pressure from customers to hold more inventory. You guys comfortable with that? I hold more inventory. What are the two things that need to come out of that discussion? And you are always going to say this in a ratios question, no matter what you're going to say it with stock. If your stock has gone up, there are two things you're always going to talk about. What are those two things?
Inventory obsolete.
Yep. In the construction industry, is there really a big risk that bricks are going to become obsolete?
No.
And cement? No. So not much of a problem, but you need to say that. Is that all right? But if you're dealing with like a supermarket or you're dealing with a furniture manufacturer or beer, something that's a consumable that goes off. Imagine this with South African breweries. We'd say, oh shit, there's a limited shelf life on the beer and there'd be a problem. But this one, it's not a problem, but you need to discuss inventory obsolescence. So that's great. And what's the other thing you're going to say if your inventory goes up?
Increase in holding costs.
You've got holding costs. What did we do with working capital? We said holding more stock means more holding costs. Our overdraft gets bigger and you're going to have to finance those things. So whenever you're dealing with inventory, it's obsolescence, less obsolescence, I'm holding less, but more chance of stock outs if it goes down. Does that make sense? If it goes up, more obsolescence, but related to the industry. And then the last thing is, okay, inventory holding and finance costs will either go up or down when you're dealing with it. So I'm just trying to get you right for like an exam solution. Is that all right? You guys comfortable with this? Makes sense. And then return on assets and equity, guys. Tell me, are you doing good or bad?
Bad.
Terrible. Okay. Absolutely terrible. With return on total assets, what does that mean? Assets are being used less effectively. Are you guys comfortable with that? ROE's gone down, ROCE's gone down. Okay. And although it's not there, do you understand that ROE should never be less than ROCE? Your 10% interest rate, guys, compared to a 6.6% return on equity, guys, you are paying more for debt than you are generating from your assets. Not that that's necessarily in the solution, but it should be. So this, if you want to just have a look here. Sorry. Okay.
Stephen,
Yeah.
can I just ask a question about the common size analysis?
Sure.
So I just want to make sure when we do it, are we just expressing like the income state items as a percentage of revenue?
Yeah. It's a good way of doing it, but generally you don't normally find common size analysis in solutions because it just takes too long to do. So you've got to look at the number of marks that are allocated. Inside this question, it's only 10. So it's unlikely you would have to do common size analysis unless they asked you to do it, because there's more than enough other stuff that you can actually calculate. But like often with common size analysis, they'll give it to you in the question and they'll have done it for you already, because it just takes too long to do it. It's going to take you 10 minutes to do it. So normally they'll give it to you if they want you to deal with it. Okay. So I just want you guys to get out of this question, guys, is the following. When you get into a question, first and foremost, when you're reading through the question, okay, I need you guys looking at the solution. What you need to do with looking at the solution, guys, at the question and the required, pull out the stuff from the question that you're going to need to put into the discussion later on. If they talk about inventory days or the steel price going down or there being forex sales or whatever it is, whatever's in the question should form part of the solution. And I'm not sure whether you guys are doing that at this point in time. But when you're reading, you should be concentrating on that, saying that will affect revenue, that will affect GP percentage, this will affect my working capital management, etc., etc. So please make sure you do it. When they ask you to calculate ratios, it's not just the ratios that you know, current ratio, days debtors, days creditors, it's also percentage movement from year to year. And when you're doing a profitability ratio, it's also a percentage of sales. Because to see whether you manage costs properly, a percentage of sales works well. Bad debts, percentage of sales, that type of scenario. Okay? Just please remember that cash is part of your working capital management. I think a lot of people in this question, when it got written in the board exam, people think of current assets as being debtors, creditors, and stock. It includes cash as well. So please make sure that you deal with cash. Where you've got a cash problem, guys, or a profitability problem, please try to do EBITDA, because I find people don't do EBITDA. You need to take the depreciation, amortization if you're going to analyze cash flow. So please make sure that you need to do it. And then the other thing was with return on equity, you still need to do it if you get asked to do profitability. I know it's treated in the textbook under a different section, but profitability will include return on equity, return on capital employed, and return on total assets. Normally, I don't know how many of you would have done that. And the reason I did this question was, this is actually a very, very good question to do from an exam technique perspective to get it right. The other thing, guys, is it's also got working capital in it. So what I've tried to do with you just in the week before your test, I've done profitability questions twice because they get asked more often. I've done gearing with you and I've done working capital management. So I've tried to cover and do a little bit of revision of all of the ratios with you while I'm doing this. So I hope this helped a little bit. But this is a great question to go through from an exam technique perspective. And it's an ex-board question. And the nice thing is with the board solution, you can see where you would have gotten your marks or not. You'll see here, there's no marks for any, they don't mention in the board exam, any other relevant point that you could have put down. If you put down a relevant point that's not there, tough shit for you. So the best way of getting marks is by reading the question properly and pulling out stuff from the question. So I really hope that this helped. So I'm going to stop this video now and I'm going to just record it. We're going to start with, let me just stop recording. Oh, sorry.